Yellow and Black Attack. I think that's my only heavy metal Christmas song. Alrighty. Good to see you all again on this last week of class. Please remember we have a quiz this week, or we've been having a quiz. So, quiz number 4, please do it by the end of the week. And as you can probably imagine, our next test is the final exam. So, anything that I'm covering over the next 2 classes will be on the final. All right, so be aware of that. Keep up with the readings and what I'm talking about, please. It's one thing. Another thing is evaluations should be out. You should have hopefully gotten an email with a link to the evaluation for the course, all your courses. And, I hope that you do it, but I want to incentivize it that you will. Because, no one does it anymore. In the old days, when we had paper evaluations, you just handed them out in class and it's like everybody did them because, what else are you going to do for 10 to 15 minutes, So, you got a good idea of where you're doing badly, where you're doing well. But now almost nobody does them. And the people who do are haters. Yeah. They're angry, so the people who hated the course are motivated, Mr. Saunders, So that's what you get. So all I know is how badly I'm doing and the things I'm doing wrong, but I'm not getting any feedback about what's good and what I could change or, do better, There's a skew, a bias. So I want to kind of level the playing field a little bit. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to offer. I'll send out an email about this. If I get 75% return, so 75% of the students do the evaluation, okay, then I will add 2 points to everyone's final grade. To everyone's, whether you do it or not. But 75%, 3/4 have to do it. If it's 74%, no 2 points. Sorry. Well, sorry, not sorry. Has to be 75%. Okay? So if that's, if that's what you want to do, it's just out there. I'll send out an email. I'm hoping that, as I said, it will incentivize people to do the evaluations so I can get an idea of what I'm doing well and what I'm not doing well. And I don't see, they're anonymous, so I'm not going to know it's you unless you make specific comments or give details that make it obvious I can tell who it is. So don't do that, Try to be specific in a non-specific way, right, Mr. Park? Or, excuse me, Mr. Moon? Don't reveal who you are. Don't give up details that reveal your identity. And I won't see the evaluations until several days after the final grade is in. So it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt your grade, okay? And I won't know who you are unless you choose to reveal yourself. So, you should feel free and comfortable to speak your mind. But getting people to speak their mind is the problem, So that's what I'm trying to incentivize it. So if 75% do it, I'll add 2 points to everybody's grade across the board. All right. The last topic I'm going to talk about over the next couple of days. Hello, Ms. Cook. Is, does religion have to be violent? That's a question. Is religion violent? In some ways, no, it's not, I said. But in some ways, it most certainly is. The question, I think, Mr. Henry, is, isn't that to be expected, or is it not to be expected? Okay? Especially if violence is part of human experience, and religion is also part of human experience. Shouldn't we expect them to go together at times? Why does that bother people? But does religion have to be violent? All right. The general consensus amongst religious people, practitioners, is that religion shouldn't be violence. Or violent, I should say. So does it have to be? All right. Religion helps a person see himself. Well, I mean, one of the things about religion, I guess this is a good point I'm making, I'm going to assume, is that religion helps a person see himself or herself not as an isolated individual, but in relationship to a God or to other human beings who believe what you believe. You become part of a community. So all the universe, well, not just humans and creatures, but all the universe goes back to an original source, either a creator God or just the existence itself, or even, just in a secular atheistic way, like the Big Bang. We're all stardust. We're all the same. We all come from the same source of this singularity that emerged, I should say, about a little over 13 billion years ago. So you don't even need a religious necessarily story to talk about us being related or having a common ancestry. Okay? So there's a unit. Religion brings unity. Remember the word religo, right? Religio. In Latin, one of its meanings, perhaps its root meaning, Ms. Krause, is to bind together, right? Like a ligature. Like a ligature, a binding. A binding. How's it going? I'm not tired, but frustrated. Long day? A lot of classes? Yes, I can understand that. What was I saying? Religio, Ms. Colonna, binding, creates community. Remember when we talked about sociology, right? Emile Durkheim, remember? His book on suicide? Remember when we did that, Ms. Colonna? Ms. Park? Suicide? Emile Durkheim? You remember? Huh? A little bit. Ms. Park, do you remember? Vaguely? Vaguely. Okay, well, at least there's something. But to recap, he's a sociologist. He wrote a book on suicide. He asked the question, who is more likely to kill himself, a Protestant Christian or a Catholic? He assumed that it would be the Catholics because of the stereotype of Catholic guilt, and the church is all about you can't do this, you can't do that, and you're going to go to hell. But actually, it was the opposite. He found that Protestant Christians were more likely to commit suicide because they lacked community. Remember? And he was a sociologist. So remember his definition, Mr. Dobson. When we looked over the definitions of religion, one of them was from Durkheim, right? Religion is a church, right? It's a community of people. He's a sociologist. He was a sociologist. He emphasizes religion, the societal aspects. So this unity brings about community. You don't just treat other people as you would want to be treated. That's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But because you don't need to be religious to come to that. You can be just a philosopher, an ethicist, and realize the wisdom of that. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But religion kind of transforms that because the other person that you're doing to is now like a relative. You talk about them in terms of familial relationship. That's my brother or sister Christian. You see that in a lot of Christian churches. Not Catholic churches usually, but hello, Mr. Rand. Protestant churches, a brother, a sister, sister so-and-so and brother so-and-so. They use that terminology. Certainly use it in religious order. We got the Mercy Sisters here, sister so-and-so. And if they're men, a lot of times they're in religious orders, they're called brother, Even if the guy's a priest, it'll be like, brother Jerome or brother Bob, or even though they're not biologically related, but you speak symbolically of that familial relationship, even though you're not. So that's how close the community is. And this works if you even don't believe in God, because all living beings, as I said, we go back to a single evolutionary event on our planet. As far as we know, we're the only time that that's ever happened anywhere that we know of so far. Imagine if we are the only one. Isn't that weird? It's like winning the multi-trillion-dollar lottery, and only one person does it. You're the one person who has the ticket for the multi-trillion-dollar lottery. Become a trillionaire overnight. Well, maybe not, because they take like half the money if you multi-billionaire. But whatever. It can also be, for some people, tends to be scary. If it's really just us, only us, looking out at, this great dark void. I mean, that's what you're looking at nighttime, right? The void of the cosmos. And we see stars, and we can't see much because of light pollution, but you can go online and see the pictures that the James Webb Telescope has taken of little portions and thousands of galaxies. But imagine if they're all empty. And we're the only one that's populated by us. It's really scary, maybe. Anyways. But even if you don't believe in a God or the supernatural, you probably believe in biological evolution. So there was an ancient ancestor that we all came from. Okay, what does religion bring to this? Well, concern for the poor, the weak, the oppressed, the marginalized. Yeah. Which an evolutionary view doesn't really bring. Remember, Rene Girard talked about the three people. Remember, this is on the quiz. Those of you taking the quiz might know this. Three people and their views about where does violence come from, or conflict. And for Karl Marx, it was economics. Some people control the means of production, and a lot of people, few people control the means of production. Everyone else has to work for them. Okay. And live off whatever pay they want to be given, salary. For Freud, it was sexual drive. Every being has a biological need to propagate itself, and so there is competition and conflict. There are only so many females, okay, and women can only be pregnant, can only be fertile for a certain number of years, whereas men are fertile for decades and decades. Or actually, do we ever become unfertile? I don't think. I don't know, ask Charlie Chaplin. Anyways, and women are, of course, when they're pregnant, they're indisposed for most of a year. So there's that sexual competition. And then there's Friedrich Nietzsche, or Nietzsche, I should say, Mr. Melendez. And what was Friedrich Nietzsche's idea? Why was there conflict? Why is there conflict according to Nietzsche? You do not remember. That's fine. That's the beginning of wisdom. That's the beginning of wisdom. Mr. Rant. Do you remember? Nietzsche? What did Nietzsche say was the source of conflict? Which he was okay with, as Girard said. Perpetual war was fine. What did Friedrich Nietzsche identify as the source of human conflict? Please don't ask Google. Please. Huh? very much. I appreciate it. Are you checking your notes? Excellent. Yeah, check your notes. Maybe next semester, my 2 classes I'll do as well.
Wait, who's the
Then I'll just go back to notebooks. Or nothing.
who's the person? What's the first one?
Pretty good. Mr. All right, Mr. Rand. Let's say Miss Bologna. Oh, Miss Kelowna, that's wrong. But the Tetrabolos, that's fantastic. No, but yeah, I mean, I know it's wrong. I don't. When I'm saying it's wrong, I'm not meaning to denigrate you, because it is wrong. It's Tetrabolos, not pretty region. But that was thought. You were trying to remember. Excellent. That pleases Miss Miss Dobson. What do you think, Miss Dobson? Do you remember what Nietzsche said? Nietzsche. Let's see. Mr. Gaines. Friedrich Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche, Mr. Gaines. What do you think? What's the source of human conflict? Is it triangle? Oh, now you're trying to think of Rene Girard. Stop thinking, you can look bad. You're looking like you're getting something for your money. Not good. What do you think? Friedrich Nietzsche? Anything? Huh? Good, good. It takes 2 seconds to search them, doesn't it? You just what you press what the F button is Alt F or Control F, and you just write it in neat. Just put it neat. NIET.
What is? I have
What is the source of conflict? Huh? Violence? Okay. No, but I appreciate that. Huh? God? No. Nietzsche didn't believe in God. There's no God to create conflict. I got you, Ms. Rogers. Ah. Did you check your notes? Thank you. God bless you. Power. The will to power. To assert ourselves as human beings. So he hated Christianity. Why? Because, and I mean, he was, he was an atheist and he was an evolutionist, the survival of the fittest. The fittest should survive, right, Ms. Krause? The healthiest should survive. Shouldn't they? Yeah. So when you have an event like COVID-19, you don't try to protect everybody. You need to thin the herd. You want people to mingle. You want the sick, the people who are disabled, whatever, to get sick, right? You want them to get COVID, right? Well, now you don't know, but if they're not healthy, they shouldn't survive, right? If people are fat like me, or they're really old, no, I'm serious, or they have other disabilities, other illnesses that make them susceptible to, then we should go. Isn't that what you just said? The healthiest should survive? You take it back. So people who are like dragging down the species, that's okay. Really? problem with you, Ms. Krause, I'm not saying you, in general, okay? The problem with what Ms. Krause said, and this is what I said with Nietzsche, is that even with his fellow atheists, people who were atheists, is that they didn't go far enough. They still wanted to they wanted to retain the slave morality of Christianity, you know? Take care of the sick, the aged, the crippled, the mentally ill. Take care of them. No, get rid of them. That's what nature says. If an animal has a disabled cub, chick, what do? They get rid of them. They kill them. They abandon them, right? They don't keep them. They don't build little buildings for them, you know, where all the little baby squirrels that, you know, were deformed can live, you know, and still have a happy life. You know, mama squirrel moves on. That's what Nietzsche was saying, the will to power. That should be that's the source of conflict. We're in conflict, okay? And that's perfectly natural. That was okay with him. That's nature, conflict. The strong survive. They fight each other and they survive. If you're weak and you lose, then, you weren't strong enough. Your will to power wasn't strong enough. You're a weak race, weak people, weak animal, whatever. But then Christianity comes along with hated the cross. Because that's what Christianity does. You know, this crucified man, you know, this man who was killed is, you know, the Savior. The man who failed, from Nietzsche's point of view. Jesus didn't conquer anybody. He didn't assert his will, even though it apparently had the power. Power to do it, right? He's the Son of God. But he's humble. Follow me because I am gentle of heart. Bull crap! You're the Son of God and you have that power. You make people do what you want them to do. You make them follow you. My yoke is gentle. My yoke is sweet. My burden light. No, you put your yoke on them. You put a rod of iron on their backs. That was Christianity's slave morality of gentleness, mercy, compassion, forgiving enemies, dialogue, taking care of the sick and the oppressed. No! It's survival of the fittest. Survival, really. Our survival hinges on who's fit. Who's the fittest? This is evolutionary biology. And that's why Nietzsche was so scared, even as I said to some of his fellow atheists, because he said, you want to be atheist, you say there's no God, and religion is, you know, ridiculous, it's fairy tales, but you want to hold on to the morality that comes to you from it. You know? Don't steal, don't commit adultery, you know, don't harm the weak, you know, so it made no sense to him. Those who are best adapted and healthiest should survive. That's what nature tells us. But human religions actually teach the opposite. They tell us to do the opposite of what's our best interest. You know, we weigh ourselves down as a species. We have to take care of the elderly when they get old. The disabled, to carry them around, sometimes literally. Those who are mentally ill. Even if they bring no benefit to the group or little benefit, other than being alive. I taught bioethics once, but you know, we get into this question when we talk about quality of life, which is a modern development. Because usually, you know, we don't, if I say, you know, should we euthanize the elderly, the disabled, you know, oh, no, yeah. they're fine in their nursing homes and group homes, wherever, mentally ill, we can give them medications and stuff. People usually don't, if a person has a quality of life, but what if a person's comatose? They're so severely damaged that, they're alive, but they're not going to be active anymore. Well, there's no quality of life. Get rid of them. It's, if the quality of life is low enough, it's like people are willing to kind of go the Nietzschean route of, well, they're really bringing no benefit. In fact, the person's bringing disbenefits because you have to have people, like nurses and people that take care of the person, wash the person, feed the person. They're a vegetable. Not going to do anything. So get rid of them. But if, I don't know, Larry can still work at the Walmart, pushing carts around, right? See these guys at the stores, right? Usually they put the mentally ill guys outside, pushing the carts around. God bless them, They're benefiting, so we can keep them around for a little bit longer. So Nietzsche. So it seems like, does religion have to be violent? I hope not. And it seems to be something that they're trying to change. Okay? People have become kind of aware of this. This is usually how religion is portrayed. This is from a monk from the Da Vinci Code. Yes, who whips himself or whips himself and then goes out and kills people. This is just a really evil face from Pope Benedict. Well, Pope Benedict, what are you thinking with that one, Wearing his little furry hat. I hope it's fake fur, not real fur. I think he got into trouble with that for animal rights groups because I think it is real ermine, which comes from some animal. Anyways, and then I showed you the guys of Islam, Shiite Islam, whipping themselves, mourning for Saddam, for Hussein and Hassan who were killed. Oh, I have Frederick Douglass on here. So I skip over to Abu Dhabi. Oh, here he is down here. All right. I guess I'll come back to that. I guess my notes are disjointed. Anyways, Frederick Douglass, if you've ever heard this statement, no peace without justice, seems to come from him. Tracked it down. There could be no virtue without freedom and no peace without justice. Yeah, so and there's a signature, and even, thank you, Frederick, you dated it. 1859, which is pre-Civil War. Pre-Civil War. Anyways, yeah, so sometimes you see people quote this and they attribute it to different people, but I tracked it down. It seems to have come from him. This American man, I believe he was a slave, but then somehow he gained his freedom, I forget, and he wrote a bunch of books and did all sorts of stuff. Anyways, he died in 1895. Justice. What is justice? What does he mean? There's no peace without justice. Well, justice is giving what someone is due as a person. As a person. Not because of what you do for me, not because of any way that you benefit me. All right? That I get a benefit from you, but simply you are due certain things in justice because of who you are. You are a human person. Religion, as opposed to, say, I guess, going back to biological or evolutionary point of view, says that we're more than animals. And people still seem to want to believe that and want to act like that, accept that, even if they don't believe in a God. You ask someone who doesn't believe in God, okay, well, what about human rights? Where do human rights come from? Okay. Do we have any, is there anything special about human life? Some people talk about the sanctity of life, the holiness or the sacredness of life. You know, no one wants to die. You know, people want to avoid death, apparently. See many people running willy-nilly towards death. You know, if I'm walking down the street and I'm like, hey, Miss Krause, come with me. We're gonna kill. We're gonna die. We're gonna get killed. You know, we're gonna explore death. You know, I don't know how many people will be like, I'm there, baby. You know? Anyways. So again, I guess we go back to that point about Nietzsche or his criticism, which is you still want to kind of hold on to that nice part of religion, which tells you that there's something special about you as a human animal, but there's nothing special about a lion or a giraffe or something. They're just living creatures. You're different because you're a human. But why are you different? Why should I owe you anything in justice as opposed to any other creature or thing? No peace without justice. Justice is the most basic sign of respect. It acknowledges that as a human being, you have a privileged status. And because you have that status, then you have rights. Okay, because that's where rights come from. It implies if something is due to somebody, they deserve it based on what they are, who they are, okay, i.e. a human person, that's when we get in the question of rights. Okay, what's due to you? Okay, and people have different standards or lists of are what are basic human rights. Okay, the right to be alive, the right to be free, freedom of movement. Okay, the freedom to direct your own life or existence, to be happy. Some of the founding fathers included property. The right to own property was part of being human, that of justice, part of being human, to own things, to have things. Maybe they shouldn't have. Maybe that shouldn't have been something. Anyways, because of some of the things they decided to own. Anyways, moving on. In modern times, you know, might include access to water, to clean drinking water or food, housing. Some places, health care is seen as a basic right that, you know, someone shouldn't have to pay to have his or her suffering alleviated. You know, if you want to, or to survive, like I need insulin shots. Well, I don't, you know, not yet. Not yet. I'm kind of pre-diabetic this part, but let's hope I don't get there. Pray God. But but people who need insulin shots or certain medications and stuff, why are you paying? I mean, this is life or death for those people. It is life or death. You get the insulin or you die. So why are you paying for it if you can't? Well, why are you paying for it at all? Because that's what's going on here. If I don't have X, I die. Well, pay me. I'll give you what you need. I'll give you your daily shot of insulin, but pay me. Pay me first. So what are you going to just watch me die? No, I'll send you pictures every day as I'm going without insulin, dying. What are you going to do? Well, I didn't kill you. But you didn't pay me. Well, you want my business to go out of business? Then nobody has insulin. Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. But anyways, justice. Why? Well, actually, what point was I making? Oh, okay. All right. So healthcare are right. So people have different ideas and different cultures. Some things we're still debating in this country, and they're still debating in other countries. some things we've already decided on: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, freedom of speech, freedom of association, a free press. Okay, not sure. All right, newspapers and reporters. Okay, I guess. Freedom of religion. Okay, basically freedom of conscience. Having guns. All right. The rights based on our humanity as we see it. Okay, so what's peace then? There's no peace without justice. If you don't give me what's my due, peace is ordered calm or harmony. Sometimes it's just defined as a state of tranquility, which I don't really like because tranquility is just another word for peace, right, Mr. Klitsch? I mean, so it's like saying, what is peace? Well, it's a state of peace. All right, come on. I haven't really unpacked a lot there. It's kind of like our definition of the profane. The profane is what's not sacred. All right, thank you. It doesn't really tell me very much. So I'm trying to make it a little bit more expressive. It's ordered calm. It's not just tranquility or calm or harmony, but it's an ordered calm. It's not chaotic. Peace is not chaotic. War is chaotic. All right, you're talking about Gaza before, Mr. Bracy? Yeah, I mean, you see those images before the war between Palestine and Israel. I mean, the Gaza Strip wasn't the best place in the world to live. It was a third world country. It seemed to be, from pictures I saw. But when I looked at it, you go on Google Maps and look at things. There were buildings there, universities, hospitals, stores, restaurants, people living, parks, farms. I mean, yeah, I know they were all crammed into one rather smallish area, surrounded by fences and surveilled every day, 24 hours a day. Okay, fine, yeah, I get that. But there was peace in the sense that it was ordered calm. War is not. War, now you look at it, destruction. I mean, when you can see physically, the buildings are in disarray, chaos. The buildings are not like buildings like they're supposed to be, intact, they're in pieces now. The sewers and the water pipes are blown up. All right. Yeah, and it's chaos. People have to move. They say, well, the Israelis say, well, they were saying, thank God they now have the ceasefire. But before it was like, okay, we're going to be clearing out this area of northern Gaza. Everybody's got to move. Okay, where? Well, we're not sure. No one's really sure where to move, but you just got to move south. Okay, so people move south, All right, but now we're going to clear out this area in the south. So now you got to move north. It's chaos. You don't know from one week to the next where you're going to be able to live. Peace is not chaos. It's a lack of disturbance, which is another word for chaos. It's a lack of chaos. There's order. I'm not saying it's perfect order. Okay? And usually in the case of peace, how do we assure ordered calm? Well, custom. That's how human beings have done it for a long, long time. Customs. But now we have laws. We write the customs down and we make them kind of, solidify them into what we call law. All right? So now, it's not, custom's fluid. You're not supposed to do it. Not supposed to violate custom. All right? But law seems to be something more. You're breaking the law. Breaking the law, breaking the law, breaking the law, breaking the law, breaking. foundation of peace is then justice. Okay, the laws have to be organized in such a way that everybody's getting his or her due. We have to all feel that we're being treated justly, right? Then there's no peace. Justice has to be the foundation of peace. Why? Because justice is kind of redressing, it's a redressal of conflict of needs. We all have needs. Our needs are in competition, okay? And Avalos, I think, has a point about scarce resources, which, Girard calls mimetic theory. There's an object of desire that, I desire and someone else desires, so I imitate them. And I said, aren't Avalos and Girard kind of saying the same thing? I still think they kind of are. Or I think Avalos is kind of saying the same thing as Girard, because Girard came first, I believe. But, okay, I'll use the idea of scarce resources. So in justice, justice redresses that. It acknowledges there's the scarce resource and that maybe more people need it than they can, but everyone needs you want everyone to feel that their needs are being respected and met, that no one's needs are being met more than yours. Pops into my mind is seeing is this, well, it's not November anymore, so Native American Heritage Month is over. But all right, I'll mention this. It's, I know it's December, but it kind of ties in with it does tie in with Native American Heritage Month. I mean, I was reading, I didn't listen to the podcast, I read the transcript because it was interesting to me. The topic was interesting about Native American law that came before the Supreme Court just a few years ago. For I believe the Navajo Nation, which is out in like Arizona, Nevada, places like that. It's a huge reservation. I think it's the largest Indian reservation in the country. Anyways, when it was created by treaty, okay, with the Navajo Nation, all right, how's it going? Still with me? It's like Thelma and Louise, Ms. Rogers. You and me going over the cliff. Thelma and Louise? Nope. Mr. Bracy, do you know what I'm talking about? Okay. Well, you still laugh. Thank you. Anyways, yeah, and they had a treaty with the American government, said this is the land that you have, and it addressed the needs and their rights, okay, as human beings, as a recognized nation, okay, what they were being given and what the United States government was bound to respect out of justice. Except they didn't mention one thing in the treaty. Water. Where do they get the water from? What are their water rights? Okay. Because if you know anything, like I've never been out to Arizona. I've flown over it. But it's basically desert. A lot of Arizona is desert, and southern Nevada is desert. There are some rivers there, which so you need water resources. But they never specifically specified where they were what water rights they had based on the treaty. Was it an oversight? Was it assumed? I don't know. I do know that it took like forever the Navajo have been suing the federal government for a long, long time to get this addressed. And for some reason, it's just never really gone anywhere. Well, finally ended up at the Supreme Court. And they lost. Yeah, they lost. The Supreme Court said, well, it doesn't specifically say water anywhere, so we have to assume that we're giving you no water rights. They're like, no water rights in a desert. What are we supposed to do? I guess they'd have to pay. They have to pay whoever does have the water rights for whatever rivers go through there. Is that just, I just, I'm not going to, is that justice? Are you making sure their needs are met? Did that question even come up? Yeah, okay, the treaty doesn't specify water rights, but in justice, okay, we know you're living in the desert, you need water. You need to have access to water. And also out of justice, you people were here first, not the state of Nevada or the state of Arizona or California. God bless them. They're American citizens, but you are the Americans. You people were living on this land, maybe, unless we displaced you. Why is there no peace then? Why are people angry? Because their needs aren't being met. What's lacking, however? Truth, justice, peace, but also truth. Truth means that our mind, our perception, our experience of reality conforms to what it actually is. If there's no peace without justice, apparently. If you don't meet the needs of people, their rightful needs. I'm not talking about like privileges. If you don't treat them justly, you can't expect peace. You should expect riots, right? Or a civil war, maybe. And I was thinking, I've been thinking about this recently, but anyways, I think it's called The Green Book. I forget the guy's name. I got to look it up. Anyways, he was a black gentleman, I think from Philadelphia, who was a postal worker. He was a mailman. And he liked to travel. Liked to get in his car with his family and, go on trips and stuff like that. All over the place, even down south. And this is like back in the 50s, 40s, okay? Even below the Mason-Dixon line. But he found that, obviously, when you went into certain areas of the southern United States, that, um, if you're a black man, they weren't going to let you in, to their hotel or their diner or whatever. They wouldn't serve you. Okay, so he saw a need there. He's like, hey, I can't be the only black person who likes to go around traveling. My other brothers and sisters, I'm assuming they're running into the same kind of problems. Where do you go? Because it's like hit or miss. How do you know if you're going to be able to find some place to sleep or get food or go to a bathroom, wash, whatever, enjoy yourself? So he created like a little book of all the places that you could go. I don't know if he went to all of them himself, but he just went that said, hey, yeah, we will serve blacks. We will, black people can, rent a room at our hotel. We're fine, to help out. No, because why shouldn't they be? He's like, why shouldn't they be? People have to allow my people be allowed to have vacations too and go see, national parks or whatever, or just visit relatives in another part of the country, and stay somewhere along the way, not have to sleep in your car because no one in town will give you a bed for the night. Bring your own food because nobody will serve you food along the way. And what I thought was interesting, because you can find these online, like on Internet Archive. You can find, because it went through many editions. I mean, these sold like hotcakes amongst the African American community. As you can maybe imagine, because there are people who like to travel. Want to take a vacation. Want to see the country, their country. And so, they went through many, many editions over the years through the 50s and the 60s. And when I was looking at some of them on Internet Archive, it was very interesting because I noticed that it wasn't the South, Mr. Bracy, Mr. Gaines, Mr. Rand. It was the North too. He gave addresses in New Jersey, addresses in Pennsylvania, you know, where blacks could be served. Also to warn them of which towns, because some of the towns had like, I forget what they called these laws, but they were like curfews where, huh? Yeah. So when sun went down, every black had to be out of the town, basically. You had to leave. You were not allowed to be found in the town. In New Jersey, which last I checked, Mr. Dobson, that's the North, right? No slavery. Blacks should be like safe to live their lives, shouldn't they? But no. And it kind of opened my eyes to the fact that Jim Crow wasn't just the South, it was everywhere. It might not have been in the laws of Pennsylvania, but people weren't forced to serve you if you were black. They didn't have to give you a room. What were you going to do if you're a black man or woman? Go to the local police? Yeah. Go to the courts? Justice. Justice. When you're treated unjustly, peace. So, yeah, I can understand the 60s and riots, and people were just like, we're fed up with this. We're not doing this anymore. But it also has to be based on truth. If there's no peace without justice, you can't live a peaceful life. I mean, if I were a black, I'm not black, obviously, but I can just imagine, like, I can't think about that. If I had to drive here, like to teach here, first of all, I probably won't be teaching here, but I'd be scared to death. I'd be scared to death. You know, you turn down the wrong lane in the wrong town and never see me again. So where's the peace? Not for my life. If I'm a white person, yeah, there's peace. It's peace. But if I were a black man or had a black skin or any other type of skin, like or Hispanic or Asian or whatever, there's no peace for me. But justice doesn't exist without truth. You have to know what is due another person. Okay? If your truth is that a person with another skin color, whatever it is, but in our context, it was usually people with brown or black skin, are not human beings, that's your truth. Is that what reality is? Well, I don't know. Just I don't know. Take a blood test. You know, take a black man, black woman, see if their blood is different. And then when we have genetics, check their DNA. And then when we know about biological evolution, you know, okay, you want to make this argument that we're almost like there are certain groups of the human species that are themselves different species and lesser species at that. And there are certain higher species. All right, let's take a look at the evidence then. Is that truthful? Is that reality? Yes or no? If it's not truthful, then the argument collapses. Yes? Well, I hope so. But in some cases, you can still live with the lie, which is our history for many, many decades. Many, many decades. I mean, our Constitution our founding fathers could not bring themselves. I mean, they could say that all men are created equal, but they could not bring themselves that extra step to say that a black man was a man. They couldn't recognize that. Or women as well. I mean, they meant men literally. All men are created equal. That did not include females of whatever color you would say. But is that true? Well, when you hear go on the internet. Nick Fuentes, I mentioned Nick Fuentes before. You know, he talks about women. You know, women are some kind of other species. They're not as good as men, you know? And I don't mean just like in a prejudiced way, because you can make the biological argument, because men have more muscle mass, men are stronger. In the old days, would also say, well, men are more rational, they're not as emotional. Okay. Is that truth, though? Is that reality? Some of it might be reality. Yeah, we do have more muscle than women. Okay. Cognitive skills, psychology. Yeah, I guess we're different. We have different organs. So that makes us different. I have a prostate. The woman with glass dome. Thank God, because it makes me pee all the time. Well, only when you get to a certain age. That's what you're looking forward to, guys. Random incontinence. See all those commercials for the diapers? The smiling people? No, you're not smiling, Mr. Lynch. And I'm not wearing one of those diapers. I'm just, so don't worry, Mr. Dobson. I'm not, don't worry. I'm not going to let it loose in class. Anyways. So truth. All right. Is that true? I think that those questions have to be asked. And they're important because, again, out of justice, I want to treat the other person, no matter what they're spouting, with as a human being, just like I want to be treated. You understand what I'm saying? Because if someone doesn't feel like they're being listened to, you're just shutting them down immediately. Okay, you're not listening to them. Then they don't feel like you're treating them with justice either. And again, no justice, no peace. So what do? I guess you go on YouTube and start ranting and raving, because no one else will listen to you. So I guess you do the next best thing. You go on TikTok or whatever and you put your rants out there and see if you can find other people who agree with them, and you start a movement, the Groypers. And then people are like, well, where did this come from? Where all these angry people come from, talking smack about Jews and about blacks and about women, and maybe because no one was listening. Truth is an important element. If we don't know what rightly we have to give somebody and what they're due, or we won't give it, that's an issue. Truth always being faithful. Treua, word truth comes from faithful. Okay? We want to have a faithful representation of how the world really is. Okay? Because when a society starts BSing itself for a long, long period, we can shovel poop at ourselves for only a certain period of time. But it still stinks. And eventually people are going to, we know this is wrong. We know this stinks. Coexistence. Well, dialogue. Talking. All right? And I don't mean like talking endlessly. And again, for me, the question is truth. If I could sit down with someone like a Nick Fuentes or somebody, I'd ask him, why do you think this about Jews, for example? Which, okay, let him listen to what he says, What's his opinion? Why does he blah, 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 blah. All right, I don't agree with that. And I might ask some other questions, historical questions, other kinds of questions, theological questions, because he claims to be a Catholic as well. And I'm pretty sure at the end of the day, I would end up finding his views unacceptable. Not for me. I couldn't follow them. So hooray for me, Ms. Lazarus, right? I'm a good person. I hope so. I hope I wouldn't start thinking like, hey, he's making some sense. If I do, Mr. Saunders, okay, I need you to come in and pull me back. So, but again, truth is the standard. It's not endless dialogue with no point of arrival. Okay? So that's not the purpose of dialogue, okay? Um, because truth cannot coexist with falsehood, nor can peace coexist with violence. So, as Avalos mentioned, for example, you have people like, say, in Islam, you have some people pointing to verses of the Quran which are peaceful, but or any religious text. You also mentioned the Bible, but you have other people of the same religion who point to verses of the Bible or the Quran that legitimate violence and terrorism and stuff like that, killing enemies and whatnot. Who's to say which is right? They're both from the same religion. Who's to say which is the authentic view of the religion, whose is not authentic? Okay? What gives one person the right to make that judgment or decision? Where's the authority lie? If the two views cannot exist, then dialogue, talking to each other, dialogomai, dialegomai, to converse, to use language, okay, simply to use words, might be the best solution for coexistence. Talking, not shutting people down. Because number one, talking doesn't necessarily kill, I don't think. I don't think it normally kills people, Mr. Dobson. Having a conversation with somebody. So that's a good thing. So it's already kind of limiting the violent activity through dialogue, okay? But also talking uncovers differences. It does uncover differences. All right, if I talk to Nick Fuentes, I'd find some real differences, about how he views the world. But that's good because now I'm starting to understand how he views the world. Now, it might be a crazy view, Ms. Colonna. It might be like, cuckoo, whatever. Or it might be an evil view of the world. That's also good to know. That's also a good thing to know. If you're like, wow, this person is really serious about this, then you can prepare. You're like, okay, this is going to have to be dealt with. You realize the danger. Okay, because I'm not saying like dialogue solves everything. Okay, to some people, like, if you read like the statement by the Pope, I asked you to read for this week. Pope Francis had this statement, the document on human fraternity for world peace and living together. Yeah, I'll admit, I think that the Catholic Church is a little bit too, what's the word I'm looking for? Reliant on thinking dialogue will solve all problems. Talking. I think talking is a good thing as a solution for coexistence because it airs out your differences. It also finds things that are common, okay? And you can embrace the commonalities, okay? So you can recognize the commonalities, say, okay, we share these same concerns, okay? So we're not so different from you. And the differences, you can recognize the differences. You can note them and acknowledge them. I understand now why you feel a certain way, okay, about certain things, why you're angry about them. Okay, but I think sometimes the church is putting too many eggs in one basket, because the question then becomes, okay, good, you acknowledge them. What are you going to do about them? Especially if you're acknowledging like an injustice, like this is what my community did to you. I recognize it. I acknowledge it. We're committed to making a land statement every time we have a meeting here of faculty and staff at Gwynedd Mercy. Ms. Cook, good for us, right? Acknowledge the local Indian tribe that really owns the land. We're not going to give it back, but At least I don't think so. We haven't opened negotiations to give it back or to pay rent. I guess we could pay rent or buy it from the local tribe if they want to sell it to us ex post facto, 200 some years later, probably be worth a lot of money. I don't know if we have that in the budget, but we do talk about it. That's where I don't think, Pope Francis in his statement with the imam, where does the rubber hit the road? What are you going to do about it? Okay? Because justice, I guess, doesn't also mean making things right? Is that part of it? Reconciliation, making things right? Hey, what do you think? Not sure. Kind of. As much as you can. Okay, well, Father, it's a nice document, but what is the Catholic Church actually going to do to Muslims to make things right so that they're saved? And you killed all those Muslims in the Middle Ages. How are you going to make that right? You'd say, well, we won't do it again. Try not to do it again. Right? Being more accurate, right? Try not to do it again. Gotta hedge your bets, Ms. Colonna. You never know. Yeah, the question comes up naturally. Okay. At the end, it's not a whatchamacallit, endless dialogue. Where are we going here? What are you gonna, if we find out that injustices have been committed, then maybe we need to be led to the next step, which is, what do we do about them? Okay. Because again, it comes back to justice and the person wanting to feel that his or her needs are being listened to. If I say, and I'm just because I'm using this, I've been using this example. Well, I've used the example already. But for Native Americans and people, it's been the fashion for the last 10 years or so to make land statements and stuff like that. Okay, fine. I'm not necessarily in principle against it. I'm just more like, all right, okay, fine. I get it. I know American history. I did stay awake during high school and in college when I took American history classes. I know about the Indian Wars and stuff like that. But what are we going to do about it then? Okay? We can talk about the injustice. I think the injustice has been exposed to an extent. So does dialogue at a certain point have to end, and then you have to go to reconciliation? What do we do with Native Americans? Do we pay them rent? Or give it back? How do we make it right if through dialogue we recognize an injustice? Okay. I don't know. I mean, I don't have an answer for that. It's a prickly answer, but people, it just comes up. There are consequences, and speaking about religion, mentioning religion, this is what the Catholic Church has been trying to do, and or change its. Well, not that it had the position, but to kind of lead religions to talk with each other over their differences so that they don't lead to violence. Okay? To recognize the injustice before it kind of festers, I think, is what they're going on. Again, as I said, I think they're putting too many eggs in the basket because they don't address, okay, but what's the end game? Because at the end of the day, it feels to me like it could be a bait and switch. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, we've listened to you. We've had our little dialogue session, our conference, or whatever. We understand that this bothers you, but we're sorry. We're not going to change or something. Nothing we can do about it. Okay, so why did you open all those old wounds again? Why are we talking about it? What changes are you going to make so this doesn't happen again? You don't keep creating making the same mistake. All right, I'll end here. God bless you all. See you on Thursday, rather. Yes. Hey. Is she? I don't think so. All right. Have a good day. Have a good day.